June 1986. Len Bias is celebrating the fact that he's about to be drafted second in the NBA draft and is expected to be a big superstar. And he starts with some of his friends. And, of course, as we know, he dies. He ODs in his University of Maryland dorm room. It's like 6 a.m. His friends call 911, several other players, and then a buddy of his named Brian Lee Tribble.
The Maryland medical examiner has now issued his report on the death of the college basketball star Len Bias. It confirms the worst suspicions. He died of heart failure because he used cocaine. First, here's ABC's Bill Greenwood.
Maryland's chief medical examiner said 5 days of testing and analysis left absolutely no room for doubt.
Leonard Bias died of cocaine intoxication.
The medical examiner said the cocaine in Bias's body was virtually pure, while most found in Maryland is 60% diluted. The medical examiner believes it happened in Bias's dorm and guesses it took only 4 or 5 minutes for the young man to die. Police are anxious to question 2 basketball teammates reported to have been with Bias when he collapsed. Officers think a friend named Brian Trible was there too and want to know if he drove Bias to an area where drugs are sold on the night he died.
And this sets off this is the time when coke goes from, I guess, being, I was a little kid then, I remember it happening, from being considered still, I guess, kind of cool. John Belushi had died, but he had been speedballing with H. This was maybe, and then 8 days after him, Don Rogers, who was already an NFL starter, same thing, heart goes. Now, I don't think either one of them were actually smoking. I think they were both. But this is 86. C-Rack is getting, all this publicity. And the 1980s, so all this publicity happens. And it's 1986. This is before the Iran-Contra scandal. This is at Reagan's kind of high point. And the Democrats, Reagan is very popular. Democrats seize on this to pass the 1980s. Well, the Republicans, everybody voted for it, but the Democrats introduced it. The 1986 crime bill, which we all know about, those of us that have criminal justice interest, and unfortunately, I'm sure some people watching this served time back then under those, it lasted until, 2010 with the Fair Sentencing Act. The crack laws are enacted, the 100-to-1. But that bill was actually known as the Len Bias bill within Congress. So the death of Len Bias actually really helped trigger, how intense that bill was. And ironically, he wasn't even smoking. Now, Len Bias that came out had done like 5 Grizzams that night, which is a lot. But what I think frightened or was kind of shocking to law enforcement or the people was that, so his friend, Brian Lee Tribble, who we'll get into, had gone to get it. And, these are just college kids buying some stuff to use, or, it was 94% pure. So the fact that young people, and it's not like any of them were Hispanic or something, like one of them was Colombian and brought it from Colombia. These are African Americans from suburban, basically, D.C. and Maryland, D.C., Baltimore. Some of them from kind of suburban Baltimore, some from suburban D.C. I don't think any of them were real inner city-ish. So the fact that they were buying stuff on the street and was that pure, you had these 2 athletes die publicly, and the Democratic Party introduced this 1986 crime bill, called it the Len Bias bill, that had the 100-to-1 sentencing disparity. So within the space of maybe 5 years after that, from about 91 or something, the incarceration rate in federal prison for black males went from 50 per 100,000 to 250 per 100,000. So the crack, I mean, people use drugs if you look at drug use then, now, by race, it's pretty similar. But who was getting charged with crack offenses? Of course, African Americans. In fact, I think at one point a study showed that in 16 state courts, not one federal, there wasn't one white person sentenced for crack at some point back there in the late 80s, early 90s. That's we have the, I think a lot about it, as I've done so many of these crime things, I'm trying to talk about stuff that has some type of use. And so many people have unfortunately passed through jail and prison. It's a very damaging experience, and there's all kind of literature and books and studies about, what's the effects of taking a multivitamin, all sorts of very kind of inane behaviors in society. If a kid in a regular type middle class school system just misbehaves a little and gets put on Ritalin, I mean, there's a file and it follows them, and a scientist could track, did kids on Ritalin when they're 7, do they go to college at a greater or lesser rate, and all sorts of things. But all these million people pass through the federal system and the state system for various drug offenses, starting, all along, but it got really bad after 86. Where's the studying and following up of all this? I would have to imagine it was very damaging. A lot of people never recovered, or broke up a lot of families, I guess. Was it done to be racist, or just usually I think politics in America does whatever's easiest. So thanks in part to Ronald Reagan's, they hadn't come out yet, but the fact that for those 2 years, 82 to 84, when he couldn't get money from Congress for the Contras, the CIA and the U.S. government kind of looked the other way, facilitated the growth of the coca business in exchange for some of the money supposedly going to Contras. And that led to the much greater availability and decreased price. And the tale of Len Bias, the sadness doesn't stop there. His brother was a premier, was a couple years younger. He, maybe Bias died in 86, and 90, his brother was in high school, or had finished high school maybe in 89, maybe 89, because his brother was 20. Okay, maybe his brother graduated in 88. His brother averaged 25 and 12. His brother was one of the top prospects in the country, but his brother had a lot of problems. He would fight with the coaches. I mean, not surprising, but he was having emotional problems. His brother, Len had not only died, but was very famous. So he didn't really get a big scholarship. And when he was 20, he was gunned down at the mall there in Maryland. So the Bias parents lost both of their sons. They were both basketball phenoms. Both probably would have been pro. Well, Len Bias was about to be pro. The brother probably would have been pro if his older brother had went pro. Both dead. Sad story. And then Brian Lee Tribble, the guy that was the only non-student in the room when Len Bias died, they tried to give him a case at the time and blame it on him, but he was found not guilty. Like, he was Len Bias's friend. He was the same age. And here's some pictures of them from back then. And, but people's behavior is weird, or just the way life is weird and random. So this Brian Lee Tribble, the fact that his name was so famous from the Bias case, and that he beat the case, it made him kind of famous, like in the streets there. And he lived in a neighborhood called Woodridge. If you're from D.C., that's a little sliver of a neighborhood that's on the northeast edge of the city, and it's like literally you drive out of Woodridge, you're in Maryland. And in 1990, 4 years after Bias's death, some of Bias's other friends and Brian Lee Tribble were all indicted in a big conspiracy, 2-year conspiracy. 110 pounds were alleged, 50 bricks over 18 months. And someone in the case got life, no parole. Tribble became state's evidence. He ended up getting 1 to 10. And that was the guy that was Len Bias in the room with Len Bias, and is probably the one who went to go buy the bag, though that doesn't make him responsible for his death. I mean, they all wanted it, or whatever the case may be. Bias did an awful lot, which makes you think he had been doing it. But the fact that there was 90-some% pure stuff floating around on the street, again, that alarmed the powers that be quite a bit. And so then our last entry here, so what else with the age of crack cocaine? So in 88, 2 years after the Len Bias bill in 86, you had an extension of that act, which added the death penalty and also added some even more stringent. So initially it had been, if you got caught with 5 grams of crack, you got 5 years minimum, which is crazy. A person could smoke 5 grams of crack. Len Bias probably did 5 grams the night he died. In 88, it added the thing, if you had a prior crack conviction and you got caught with even 1 or 2 grams, you got mandatory prison time. So it made it, so basically, I mean, for a long period, all from the late 80s through probably the late 90s, I mean, like, you literally could just have been a crackhead. Like, maybe you caught some federal case for crack, and then after that you get out and you're literally a crackhead. You're getting caught with, a couple rocks, and you're getting sent back. 5 years, 3, we'll let you plead to 5. Well, you already went once, they're going to give you 10. Like, a lot of people lost long chunks of their life for, amounts of drugs that people would probably use in an hour, which is pretty horrific. I mean, talk about a horror movie. And in the state of California, you had people getting 3 strikes, and cocaine never went away. Crizac never went away. In fact, global coca production is at an all-time high, of course, now. And adjusted for inflation, it's much cheaper now than it was in the past. And people say that people back, I mean, the crackheads never went away. They're still crackheads. And people told me in the street, like, oh yeah, young people are back buying. They were getting pizzouter during the pandemic when they had money, and now young people are quartering like, oh, let me get an 8-ball hard. And yeah, I know, it was like, I know they don't sell it, so they must be smoking it. And in the hood in Detroit. So it's going on there. I'm sure it's going on everywhere. So all those wasted years of time. I even know a relative of a friend of mine was somewhere and bumped into some guys from Chicago who had, this back in the early 90s. He was a super petty, like, just, I guess, had some rocks. The guys from Chicago had a couple bricks of powder, and he was the wet master. He knew how to cook. They paid him to cook. Somehow the police got involved, and everyone got questioned. And he tells them, oh, it wasn't mine. They just paid me to cook it. He got like $1,000 a brick, or $1,000 for both to cook it. Well, he confessed to being the one who manufactured the Crizac. The Chicago guys got a couple years. He got like 23 years or something. He did a long time. He ended up he only did maybe half or something of it. That when the laws changed, he got out. He got in some more trouble, I think, but yeah, he just cooked it up. And he did a long time. Like, he at least was in prison 11, 12 years. So, pretty damaging. And then our next entry in this history of crack here is the crack riots of 95. So, Congress was going to... The law was gonna repeal, and Congress voted against it. And there was uprisings in the federal prison system. They tried to keep it out of the news a lot, but, I mean, it's known about it. You can read about it. If you search crack riots, 1995, there's some newspaper articles, and then there's like Prison Legal News has some, and different inmates have accounts. But FCI Talladega in Alabama, it started. People put on masks, try to take control of the facility. Guards had to come in there with guns and chemical spray and get it back under control. FCI Memphis, maybe Lewisburg might have been the only USP. I think there's a few other FCIs, Federal Correctional Institute, medium security. The USPs, the U.S. penitentiaries, are probably easier they're already so restrictive, but probably it's hard to start a large-scale riot. But who knows, they may have covered it up. But there was probably over $100 million in damage done to property at different prisons in the space of just about maybe a week. There was a bunch of uprisings all over the place. At each prison, they made an example out of 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 inmates and gave people, here's an extra 72 months consecutive. Here's an extra 84 months consecutive, starting a riot. So a bunch of people got punished for it. It didn't change anything, of course. Yet another example of that was bad. A bad solution to a problem. So, glad that they changed the law back in 2010. And then the first step, they made it retroactive in 2018. So it wasn't until 2018 that they made it retroactive. That's where you see a lot of people got out after that. In 2010, they changed the sentencing. You had to be caught with an ounce to get 5 years. And then in 2010, they made it retroactive. And as of last year, only about 600 people got sentenced in federal court for actual, per se, crack violations. I don't think the feds really pick up crack cases much. I mean, they do a little bit, but not too much. And so that's where we're at with it now. But it all kind of started somewhat with Len Bias. And that 1986 law that had the 101 was called the Len Bias Act. And him and Don Rogers died right in a row in the summer of 86, and it was a big deal. There's some not the fun side, but there was some history of the bad side of the game. Al Prophet, American Dope.